Welcome back, students, in the second part of my discussion regarding Gulliver's Travels. And this is going to be the last part of my discussion regarding this text because I think I have almost covered all the points that can come in your exam, from which important questions, being objective type or in subjective type or in any format else can come in your exam. So, in this lecture, I am going to discuss few more important issues embedded in this text. You see, one of the foremost points, issues or aspects which you should ponder, you should think over, is that the aspect of individual versus the society. How the individual existence of human being is set against or is pitted against social pressure or social demands. To what extent the individual existence of any human beings is compelled to conform to societal demands, or to what extent an independent human being can resist that social obligations. This is going to be a very important point of discussion. You see, like many narratives about voyages to non-existent lands, as I have mentioned in the last part, in the previous part, that all these kingdoms, be it of Lilliput or be it of Brobdingnag, Laputa, Japan, etc., or although Japan exists, Japan truly exists, but except Japan, all the other places mentioned in the text do not actually exist in this planet. So, this novel explores the idea of an utopian world. Utopia, as coined by Thomas More. Thomas More's famous book in the Renaissance period, the Utopia. So, Utopia is an imaginary model of the ideal community, Adorsho. And Utopia is often compared to the Garden of Eden, the paradise, the Shorgo, right, the Jannat. So, the utopian ideal is like this. Even in contemporary politics, contemporary Indian politics, the very idea of Ram Rajya is an ideal community, is a utopian state. So this idea of utopia is an ancient one, going back at least as far as the description of Plato's Republic, famous book Republic, of a city-state governed by the wise and expressed most famously in English by Thomas More. Swift nods to both words in his own narrative, though his attitude towards utopia is much more skeptical, rational. Right? Again, this debate between rationality and absurdity. And one of the main aspects he points out about famous historical utopias is the tendency to privilege the collective group over the individual. So, Utopia, the land of utopia, is not only ideal but a communitarian one. Communitarian, as it can be referred to Karl Marx's concept of communism, the pre-communist society where people used to live by hunting and gathering, etc. Later, they moved into agriculture, cultivation, but previously the pre-communist society, the very primitive form of human civilization. You see, the children of Plato's Republic are raised communally, in a communal way, not the word communal as we use now, but koshtiboddho as we mean in Bengali, with no knowledge of their biological parents, in the understanding that this system enhances social fairness. Swift has the Lilliputians similarly raise their offspring collectively, a similar pattern which we can witness in the first part of Gulliver's Travels. But its results are not completely utopian, since Lilliput is torn by conspiracies. Yes, there are intrigues, political intrigues, debauchery, perfidy, etc., and jealousies and backstabbing, right? Sense of deception and concealment. In the last part, similarly, the Hunanims also practice strict family planning, dictating that the parents of two females should exchange a child with a family of two males. It can sound as a ridiculous idea But notwithstanding the fact that Swift was writing in 18th century with having the idea of utopia in his mind, this is very significant. You see, they come closer to the utopian ideal than the Lilliputians in their wisdom and rational simplicity. But there is something unsettling about the Hunanims' indistinct personalities, about how they are the only social group that Gulliver encounters who do not have proper names. Right? So there is a question about individual or personal identity, and there is a crisis emanating from this aspect. Despite minor physical differences, they are all so good and rational that they are more or less interchangeable. They can substitute each other, which is completely impossible in human society, in our society. See, in their absolute fusion with their society and lack of individuality, they are in a sense the exact opposite of Gulliver, who has hardly any sense of belonging to his native society and exists only as an individual eternally wandering in the seas. A voyager, a traveler, a gypsy, or particularly the idea of nomad, belonging to no place. This is a nomad, and Gulliver in this sense becomes a nomad in the last part of the book. So Gulliver's intense grief when forced to leave the Hunanims may have something to do with his longing for union with a community in which he can lose his human identity. There is a sense of losing his own biological identity or sexual identity or generic racial identity. In any case, such union is quite impossible for him since he is not a horse. There is a difference, biological, physical, stark difference. And all other societies that he had already visited make him feel alienated as well. This is the very crucial part of this debate between individual existence and social conformation. You see, Swift's novel, Gulliver's Travels, in fact can be described as one of the first novels of modern concept of alienation. Remember, again I am referring back to Karl Marx. Karl Marx and his friend Friedrich Engels gave us the concept of alienation. But their concept of alienation is based on this mode of production and class struggle, class conflict. But the concept of alienation that we find in Gulliver's Travels is completely different, right? Completely different in its approach. The crux is same. The crux is quite similar. You see, Swift focuses on an individual's repeated failure to integrate into societies to which he does not belong. England itself is not much of a homeland for Gulliver, and Swift has quite undoubtedly, very frankly accepted it. And with his surgeon's business unprofitable and his father's estate insufficient to support him, he may be right to feel alienated from it, right? So Gulliver never complains explicitly about feeling lonely, but the embittered and antisocial misanthrope at the end of the novel, I have told you that Gulliver has become a misanthrope. We see that the novel is clearly and very profoundly, Gulliver has become an isolated individual pursuing a solitary existence. Thus, if Swift's satire mocks the excesses of communal life, it may also mock the excesses of individualism, and in its portrait of a miserable and lonely Gulliver talking to the horses at home in England rather than talking to his wife and children. So, at the end of the novel, to a certain degree, the biological trait, the physical qualities, characteristics, the genetic and generic features of human beings is quite modified, changed, altered and transformed. Gulliver has caught in the process of slowly been transforming to horses, abandoning his human identity. So, in this case, the idea, the very concept of individual identity becomes extremely complicated. Right? Now we should approach the limits of human understanding. This is a very significant aspect. You see, the idea that humans are not meant to know everything and that all understanding has a natural limit is important to Gulliver's Travels. Again, I am referring back to the author Jonathan Swift's positionality. He was a clergyman. Although he was a very literate, having a liberal outlook, but still he was a part of the clergy. So he belonged to a very conservative framework, very orthodox attitude he used to possess. And this conservative attitude, Swift singles out the theoretical knowledge in particular for attack. Because as science is gradually paving its way, as science is gradually taking giant leaps, the importance of God is gradually decreasing. Right? This is the famous theory of, or the idea of the great chain of beings. After Darwin has discovered the theory of evolution, it became quite prominent that God did not create human beings. We have evolved from apes, from monkeys. We are a better version of monkeys. And very strikingly, it is not the monkeys here with whom Gullivers feel a certain degree of affinity, but it is the horses who are the rational beings. So practical knowledge is also satirized when it does not produce results, as in the Academy of Burnaby, where the experiments for extracting sunbeams from cucumbers amount to nothing, satirizing the Royal College Society of. Swift insists that there is a realm of understanding into which humans are simply not supposed to venture. So we should leave, or we should go only to a certain benchmark, a certain yardstick, right? We should not cross that threshold. And even sitting in the year 2020, if we just give a glimpse around us, we will see that we, despite our tremendous achievements in the field of science and technology and astronomy, we do not know what lies in the next galaxy, in the adjacent galaxy, which is the Andromeda galaxy. Right? We even do not know every detail about our own solar system. So, no matter how much human beings, how much human science has endeavored to give a giant leap, a jump, but we are not very successful in our attempt. Let's be very clear about it. And 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the situation was more worse, and most possibly Jonathan Swift, through the representation, through the prototype of Gulliver, the figure of Gulliver, is trying to indicate this major drawback, this major limitation of human beings. Accordingly, he may strike us as frustrating, hollow, or empty, though it is likely that his personal emptiness is part of the overall meaning of the novel. You see, at the end, his revulsion with human condition, Gulliver shows in his shabby treatment of the generous Don Pedro, right, extends to himself as a Yahoo, so that he ends the novel in a thinly disguised state of self-hatred, and it is this aspect of self-hatred from which the entire question of misanthropy generates. Swift may thus be saying that self-knowledge has its necessary limits, just as theoretical knowledge, scientific knowledge, practical knowledge does. And that if we look too closely at ourselves, we might not be able to carry on living very happily. So, these are the few things that you should study, read over and again. Right? All the best for your exams, study well, and if you have any doubts, you are most welcome to contact me.